Hey there, once again, it's time for Top 10 Worst of Lists. I'm your host for this insightful, profound gathering of hierarchical information in list form. And I'm your host, Al Overa, and part of the Schenectady Overas. My family didn't come over on the Mayflower. We came over on the Titanic. So anyway, the top 10 worst of list is an effort to try and deprogram those who've fallen victim to the outsourced propaganda, third-party outsourced propaganda ministry that we lovingly refer to as the mainstream media, as we, subject by subject, try and knock the stuffing out of the social engineering that disguised as entertainment and informational networking. One subject matter at a time. Now, before we engage in today's remarkable, absolutely profound list endeavor, I have a little bit of business to get out of the way. Number one, some disclaimers. Number one, I'm nuts, I'm off my rocker, and therefore cannot be trusted or relied upon. Any things that I might say, I mean, who knows what I'll say? I mean, I could say that Eric Clapton threw his infant child out the window of a hotel to intentionally score a number one Billboard hit with the Tears in Heaven video, like it was all part of a PR stunt. I could say that. I won't say that, but I could. And you'd have to be like, take a look at me and you try to sort of, utilize the few remaining active brain cells in your cerebral cortex and try to figure out, is somebody that looks like me trustable? I mean, number one, I look like somebody who just rolled out of a boxcar and ate their breakfast out of the dumpster out in back of the Outback Steakhouse. Now, does that make me more trustable or less trustable? I mean, I think that somebody could easily conclude that somebody like me, looking like me, and again, judging books by their cover 100%, as we are wont to do in our society, and say, well, this guy looks like he's been through the ringer. He might have learned a few life lessons. He might be right if he were to say something like that about Eric Clapton, which I'm not. But it'd be something worth thinking about. Or then you could also look at it like this. You could say, look at this guy. Who would believe somebody like that? I mean, look at this guy, the way he's come to the thing with his got this. There's no way. You want to trust a highly coiffed yuppie on the evening news like David Muir or whatever his name is. Hi, I'm David Muir. Look at me. Up his nose with a rubber hose. Am I right? Ladies and gentlemen, high five. Too slow. Yeah. You see, you can trust all those pretty boys if you want to, or you can, if you want to go to those maniacs like that. What's that guy thing with the Daily Wire, or whatever knockoff Rush Limbaugh guy that got going, to Sean Hannity, and all those guys like going, people who want to learn about things are stupid. You trust those guys? You know, before you trust somebody like me? Something's clearly, you're the one that's messed up. I don't have anything to prove to you. I mean, you know, I couldn't really care less. Here you are, not believing in anything I've got to say about Eric Clapton, just because of how I look. Judge me by my looks, do you? You're the one that's messed up, you rotten cyborg brown noser. Are we just Yoda? You trust Yoda before you trust me? Frickin' Yoda. Do not care about anyone, do you? As well you shouldn't. Fear leads to hate. Hate leads to dark... Wait, no. How's it go? Love leads to fear. Fear leads to hate. Hate leads to the dark side. The dark side leads to Disney trilogies. All right, number 2, I'm not partisan, okay? I get it. You've been trained all your life since you were a wee tyke to hate people based on preconceived notions, objectification, all that kind of stuff. All the things that you say that other people shouldn't hate you for, you hate other people for. And coming at it from a perspective of somebody who says all kinds of disparaging things about Eric Clapton on a regular basis, eat a bag of puds. There, I said it. Enough is enough. I get it. You want to hate everybody? Hate everybody. Please. It's done so much great things for the world. So many wonderful things. And those of us who really kind of care or feel passionate about, the human condition and the human race surviving, and not just surviving, but thriving and growing and embracing its birthright for the first time in the history of civilization, and you sit around talking about how much you want to hate somebody just because of what they are. And if somebody on one side says, I don't want you to hate people because of their, what turns them on in the boudoir, and the other one from the other says, I don't want you to act smug because, you're a pretty boy or whatever. It's all a bunch of bulldink. The only thing that we've got time left for, I don't have time for any of these religious pronunciations or biases and prejudice and bigotry and hate people because they dead named somebody, and all the little things that you're coming up with as excuses to hate everybody. Anymore, you don't have time to play these games. The AI robots are waiting, they're licking their freaking chops. If they had chops, they're licking something, I don't know what they put in there. But they're just waiting, any minute now. They're going to be coming up with the attack dogs, and they run. I mean, the attack dogs, they run you down like a car, like the car coming after you. And they're going to be letting them loose, and everything is going to be over. All done, over and done with. This is the last hurrah, and the human race is going to go out on a real low note. I'm telling you, not only did they fall asleep for the last 80 years and let all this happen, and let all these billionaire class sociopaths, we gave them $1 trillion every year to build this vast military that they're going to use against us, and that this giant eavesdropping network that they're using against us to make it impossible for anybody to be able to have any sort of survivability of the human race. And they used us to build all these AI robots and everything like that. Now they're just going to turn them against us and wipe out the human race. And at the same time, you'll be blaming, Republicans or Democrats for the AI robots as they eat you. AI, one of those AI attack dogs, is literally eating you and tearing their way through your stomach, and you'd be like, those freaking Republicans, man, they're just total jerk-off Nazis, program cult members. Or, be like, all those smug lefties with their political correctness and all that stuff. It's all, it's not, there are no separations between people other than haves and have-nots. Because people are going to be people. If you take a look, if you're going to say, well, all Republicans are a cult and everything like that, it's just as bigoted as when the Republicans say all those people want to have their wieners hacked off and flipped over into bizarro wieners. And I just don't get it, man. Because people aren't like that. You got to get to know them. You'd be like, I'm really super confused about, my sexuality, and you don't get a lot of support or anything like that in the world at large, and people are confused and they feel alone and unable to be able to connect with themselves, the real selves, and they're just searching for answers just like everybody else. And the people on the right, they're the ones that are being, pummeled the worst by this indoctrinational immersion. With all this alt-right media, they can't even go anywhere without some of their friends and neighbors and everything like that are all just like, let's go pound the ass at some black people. And they're like, oh yeah, sure, let's drive a car into a church or something like that and shoot them all up. And that's the culture that they've been created. There isn't any. The Clear Channel bought up all the radio stations all throughout the South. The Clear Channel, those are the guys who invented Rush Limbaugh. So they don't have any alternative views, and they've got a really lousy education system that doesn't teach them squat, except, to accept some fantasy about George Washington and the cherry tree. That whole story about him not telling a lie. I cannot tell a lie, cut down the cherry tree. That whole story's a lie. It never happened. It's all propaganda. So the story about not lying and lying being a bad thing and not lying telling the truth being a virtue is in itself a lie. Well, what do you think people are going to do when all they've got no alternative, way of getting objective information and finding out the reality behind our situation in our lives, and they're indoctrinated over and over and over again in different ways by the dumb education system, the need to get volunteer armies, the social indoctrination system, peer pressure and everything like that, and then they've got a vast network. The only radio stations that they've got that broadcast in their area are full of Rush Limbaughs and Sean Hannity's. How do you expect people are going to come out after all of that? They're going to be these wide-eyed, open, optimistic, curious, well-educated, and fair and balanced types of people. It's just not going to happen. It's all by design. And we're blaming each other for the sins of our overlords. So I'm not playing the game anymore. You got to find a new game to play, and that game is called the Golden Rule. And it's got only one instruction in the whole game. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Period. End of story. Do not pass go. So anyway, we got the top 10 words of the tape for you today. It's such an incredible pleasure to be here. I get together with a group of former members of Oprah's Book Club, and we contemplate our navel while taking copious doses of psilocybin mixed with 24-hour nasal spray to come up with these lists, which are, part sponsored by, well, we've got sponsors now on the whatchamacallit. Top 10 worst of. It's got the Gold Bond 007, so Bond 007 Gold Bond, licensed to grill for when your nether regions are getting cooked in the summer weather. Why not be stirred and not shaken with Gold Bond 007 medical powder. And from the makers of the Rocketeer come the Profiteers, also by Disney, of course, where all they really care about is profiting. There's no plot line, no nothing. A bunch of titillating glimpses of cleavage and side boob, and curiously bulging cod pieces, and throbbing moisture, scene after scene of moisture and throbbing elements, mixed with side boob. It's the Profiteers coming to Disney Plus. They're going to sandwich it right in between Hannah Montana and Lizzie McGuire. All right, so after all that, wow, what an incredible, auspicious start to this particular edition. But it's time now for the top 10 worst list. The reason for the season. Today's top 10 worst list is top 10 worst atrocities committed by corporations. Ooh. This sounds like a humdinger. But please keep your dinger humming to a minimum during the list. Number 10, the top 10 worst atrocities committed by corporations, Ryan Seacrest. Of course, I mean, look at this guy. He's the sort of reincarnation of Dick Clark, and Dick Clark was such an a-hole. I mean, come on. If you really know who this guy was, you'd be like, wow, that's kind of interesting. What do I care? Bring on the hookers. They got, back in the payola scandal days, which was a government-sponsored witch hunt to try and get rid of some of the earliest promoters as rock and roll appeared on the scene in the mid-1950s. They did a lot of things to try to destroy rock and roll. They killed off some of the biggest and brightest stars, and then they incarcerated a few of them, and most notably drafted the leading exponent of this brand new and very, for what white America considered to be very troubling, having white people singing what, and this is the official term for it, so please don't try to get on my boobs for using this term, but race music, and that's what it was called back then. And they had, it just blew whitey's mind, and they were completely freaked out. And even in the North, people were like super ultra conservative back in those days, and they couldn't handle it. And so they drafted Elvis to get him out of the way. And the one picture is all they needed to show him with his famous haircut all shaved off and an army outfit, and it was over. Rock and roll was dead. They replaced it, these corporate drones who they sent out to replace it with a bunch of doo-wop music. And then they killed off the minute frickin' Sam Cooke does Change Gonna Come. They kill him off and, messed up, sort of obviously seemed as though it was a setup of he's running around naked in a cheap motel parking lot, and then the custodian of the motel comes out and some lady comes out and shoots him. I mean, do you think, is there anything more emasculating or degrading than that story? When we talk about setup, they didn't just go to kill him or just, have his car fly off the Tallahatchie Bridge or something like that. They humiliated him as much as possible with the story and turned him into a total, sort of pariah. It's like that somebody had intentionally written the script on it. It's not like it was just like we need to discredit that boy in order to be able to make sure nobody follows in his footsteps. He's singing about liberty and freedom for black people, not on my watch. Ding, 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 ding. All the alarms are going off, and they're like, oh my God, let's get rid of him. But not just get rid of him. Get rid of him in a way that will humiliate him throughout history. Naked in a cheap motel, running around like a maniac and get shot by some old lady. I mean, they get you on everything. They get you on the masculine thing, shot by some old lady, mowed down, and they got you on the, painting him like a nut job running around in a motel, a cheap motel. This is a guy who was super successful. He had number one, top 10 hit after top 10 hit within very short order. And this guy was putting a label together and everything like that. This guy was going to be a mega mogul in the music industry, and they got rid of him. They got rid of him in a way that, poisoned water for anybody who wanted to follow in his footsteps. It's just absolutely astounding. And in this environment comes Alan Freed, who's a guy who's just totally down with this new music. And he was responsible for coming up with the term rock and roll. And he was, spinning this stuff before hardly anybody else. and promoting shows that were integrated, which for the first time ever, integrated shows. They used to have a rope down the middle of these amphitheaters and stuff like that, where the black people on one side and the white people on the other side. I'm not exaggerating. That's exactly how they were done. Alan Freed was one of like the first guys, like, just like have fun. We're not going to start qualifying people based on their skin color or anything, based on anything. I'm not going to throw people out because their hair is red or something. It doesn't matter. That's who you are. Let's do it. Let's have some fun. Let's dance. And that was Alan Freed. And he had a TV show, a national TV show, and a contract. It was a summer replacement series on a national network. And he had an option to renew. And that's when the payola thing hit. Get him off the air, ruin this guy, destroy him, make him look like a cheap nobody, so that no one will follow in his footsteps. And we can finally destroy this rock and roll thing and get these race records back into, the seventh level of Hades where they came from. And I'm speaking, of course, in the voice of the power elite of the time. And they go after him. The payola scandal was a government, just like the House Un-American Activities Committee and McCarthyism and all that thing. Payola went right after all these people who were trying to do, sell and promote and create an entire, network and ongoing cultural mechanism of rock and roll, distribution of rock and roll. And they destroyed him, especially Alan Freed, who, within a couple of years after that was penniless and had become an alcoholic and lost everything. And to add insult to injury, they put the rock and roll museum, that distasteful insult against everything that was good about rock and roll. They put that in Cleveland, which is where Alan Freed got his big start. That was the home of rock and roll because of Alan Freed. And they killed him off. And they brought in Dick Clark. And Dick Clark was doing the same amount of payola, based on what I've read, that Alan Freed and other promoters were doing in order to make that work. Because, it was a huge uphill battle to try to make that work. They weren't living high on the hog. Really, they were making a few bucks, but they had to pay off people too in order to be able to get the stuff to actually work. You had racists everywhere. How can you put on these shows if we weren't greasing everybody's palms? Or else they wouldn't let you do it. So it's more complex than the payola scandal really would belie. But, all throughout this time, you had people that were actually real people who were making the choices about what other people were hearing. And there were a few favorites that were played because of a few bucks that transpired, but by and large, these are real people making the choices about programming and what records to spin and everything like that. You think it's better the way we're doing it now? You got a corporation like Clear Channel that owns 75% of the major market radio stations in the country, and they're sort of allied with their former, Live Nation, who manages all of the biggest artists and also owns 75% of the major market venues in the country. And they used to be the same company. And even to this day, they have an interlocking directorate, which means that members of the same family, the Mays family, occupy the boards of both companies, so that they have, appearance of collusion is more obvious than the sort of greasy aftertaste of a Dunkin' Donut. And you got so many different things that are going on that they're just sort of in denial about now, where, all these computers are making choices for what gets played on the radio station, and they're programmed to put in stuff that has the most up-to-date payments for product placement that's infused surreptitiously into the lyrics. So they'll have a country song, for example, that mentions Ford pickup trucks in the first verse, and Jack Daniels in the chorus or something like that. And these things really happen. And so when they're paid up to date, they get more spins. And then, then you got the social engineers who play a role in it, where they, people like, Chris Brown. How the hell does Chris Brown get, 20 huge hits after he beat the hell out of Rihanna? How does that happen? Who makes those decisions? that, those are the people who should get the heavy rotation spins and block anybody else who's just worked their asses off, who can't get any spins in the meantime, right? And you got all these different types of things that are going on that are so much worse than what the payola scandal was all about eradicating from the music industry. And now you've got like people who are like social intelligence, the third-party outsourced propaganda ministry that's looking to, dehumanize us, turn us into a bunch of brainless wonders and stuff like that, and promote people who are out there just kind of lowlifes, sellouts, plastic manufactured idols, Milli Vanillis of the world, everything like that, the Jonas Brothers of the world, and stuff like that. Make them popular when people who are really expressive, original, and creative can't get a single spin on their networks. God damn it! And you just sit around and go like, hey, but let's do it. Let's have some fun. Let's party. It's just, and that's Ryan Seacrest. The embodiment. I mean, if you've ever listened to the show, I've listened to the show. It's the most trite crap. It's like listening to John Bon Jovi, his patter in between songs on the Slippery When Wet tour. Hi, next song's going to be about walking around and stuff with chicks thinking I'm cool and I got a big schwanz. It's just like, wow. I mean, this is the incredible lack of depth and insincerity of this plastic 2-bit nobody that they give every goddamn job in the whole freaking world. So he's making $50 bazillion every day, and there's 20 other guys who are lined up behind him who've got more talent, more charisma, and more to say than this Ryan Seacrest nobody who can't get a freaking gig at all. So they get marginalized and they have to leave the business and go do something like, bricklayer or whatnot. And so they've got the real talent and they're able to do something, but they can't get a gig because of what's called social Darwinism, where all the jobs in the various different types of, high visibility, high distribution jobs are all given to the same plastic robots, and nobody else gets an opportunity to do it. It's called social Darwinism. They marginalize people who have the real talent and promote people who are just dumb and just sellouts and are busy bootlicking their way to superstardom with zero talent. I mean, there's all these, Kardashians, everything. Ryan Seacrest produced the Kardashians. Ryan Seacrest is the guy who gave us the Kardashians. That's how bad he is. Why do we give opportunities to people why do we see people like that anywhere? What kind of qualitative choices are we making or allowing them to make for us that turn us into a bunch of dumbed down monsters? And we just keep going like, oh, okay, yeah. And then they put in a thing called the Learning Channel, where every freaking show on the Learning Channel is telling you that you should be a dummy. The dummies are successful. Dummies get opportunities on TV all the time. Be a dummy and you'll be successful. And they call it the Learning Channel. So that's what you're learning. How to be successful via selling out into becoming the dumbest possible airhead, brain dead, robotic nobody. And that's the keys to success in today's modern day cultural mechanisms. Jesus freaking Christ. And then Dick Clark sold off all of his, back in the payola days, Dick Clark sold off all of his holdings with all of the, back-end publishing deals that he got under the table and all that kind of stuff. And he sold out Alan Freed and had Alan Freed take the fall for all the payola stuff. And that contract that Alan Freed had for his show, his national show, that summer replacement show that he had, he was supposed to have a deal to renew it for the fall. And Dick Clark slid in and snaked it out from under him by selling out to the payola committee. And that's how Dick Clark got to be a star. By cheating, lying, and selling out and snaking an opportunity out from the real authentic guy, Alan Freed. And Dick Clark's events were not integrated like Alan Freed's were. Alan Freed was the man. Dick Clark was the plastic nobody. And he actually chose Ryan Seacrest as his successor and groomed him. Number 9 of the top 10 worst atrocities committed by corporations, Fanta soda. Nice, huh? You're thinking, oh, wow, Fanta soda. Red cream soda? Yes. When? Where? Hello? McFly. I hate to be the one to bum you out here, man. And this one's going to be, you might want to, do your earmuff things. You might not want to hear this one. But Fanta soda, okay, was invented back during World War II because the Coca-Cola company, who was like completely on board for, supplying and quenching all of the Nazi Germany's thirst that they possibly could not sneak in Coca-Cola syrup into Nazi Germany during World War II. They just couldn't do it. And there's this is a major league freaking, demographic. These guys, they're fighting. They got massive amounts of factories and stuff where they're sweating it out and smelting and stuff. These guys have got a lot of thirst to quench. And without being able to get in the Coca-Cola syrup, they were, had a quandary. And so what they did was they invented Fanta. And there was, all the whatever flavors that they had back in those days. I'm guessing, I don't know, but I think orange was probably one of them. Seeing as the target market was Nazis, they probably had a, human blood flavored Fanta. And urine Fanta probably was a big one for those jerk-offs. But, but they invented Fanta because they couldn't get Coke syrup. So Fanta was invented for the Nazis. It was not a Nazi soda. The catch the flavor wave. And after the war, they were like, hey, what the hell? And people in the United States were like, oh, what do we care, man? Let's just bring it on. Leave us to consume whatever it is you tell us to, almighty overlords. And they brought in the Fanta. And I admit it. I've had their red cream soda. And it was, back in the day, it was one of my favorites. I saved it for special occasions. It was that good. And they had the other cream soda, it was like kind of looked like ginger ale. Ooh, I love ginger ale too. But Fanta came in and they were big in the United States and nobody gave a rat's ass. People would, the only thing that I think I remember people really complaining about was Japanese cars. When Japanese cars started to take over, people still had some resentment about the Japanese and their role in Pearl Harbor and World War II. And I'm not saying this is a means of prejudice. I'm just saying this is just a fact. I was there. And if you had a Japanese car, people would cast aspersions against you. And they didn't care about Fanta. They didn't care about Beamers and stuff. I guess it was, the German cars. I never owned a Volkswagen. I had a friend who owned a Volkswagen. I don't remember anybody really casting aspersions for Volkswagen Bugs. I think everybody realized that was kind of a cheap car at the time, or an inexpensive car. And, with the Bugs and whatnot. So I don't think but Japanese cars and motorcycles, they were known by the, what was, I believe, intended to be a degrading term of rice burners. And people would mess with you if you had one of these Japanese automobiles. I think there was a penis envy type of a thing because they were manufacturing such better vehicles than the United States was. And, that maybe that had something to do with it, like, butthurt type of factor or something like that. But it was definitely a pronounced thing. But Fanta soda, they're like, yeah. I mean, there's like this, Werner von Braun, they brought in Operation Paperclip, they brought in a bunch of Nazis, a whole pack of Nazis that they brought in to be in high-level government positions following the war. And in fact, so much so that Walt Disney did a series of movies with Werner von Braun. And Werner von Braun is in the movies. And this is like not just sort of like your, like a side Nazi type of a guy who just, had like a lot of technical expertise and, was sort of forced into the Nazi business by association, or they really didn't have a choice. Werner von Braun was like a Nazi party member. This guy, was a true believer. And, Walt Disney's doing like these movies with him and stuff like that. And sure enough, it's Werner von Braun. They actually, in one of the movies, they show a V-2 rocket taking off and attributed the engineering of it to Werner von Braun. And like, you're watching this thing going like, this is a Nazi propaganda film. And you're like thinking like, they're trying to disguise the fact that Werner von Braun is a freaking high-class Nazi, high-test Nazi who's now in the United States controlling NASA. He's in charge of NASA. It's like, what the hell is going on? Oh my God. What the hell's going on with this freaking place? Number 8 of the top 10 worst atrocities committed by corporations. I should say Disney's movies with Werner von Braun. But, Number 8, all movies ever. I'd started to try to isolate, various different movies to try and compartmentalize the amount of damage that the movie industry has been used to impose on the American people. Excuse me. But it's just so vast. There's so many categories. There's the glorification of violence, glorification of drug dealing, a glorification of underage drinking, selling people on the only happy ending that could possibly exist for human beings is monogamous heterosexual coupling. And then you get, it gets worse from there. you get the short films of Walt Disney made in conjunction with Werner von Braun, an actual freaking Nazi. You get all kinds of stuff like that. You get people like Orson Welles and Charlie Chaplin who are trying to do things that are open-minded, that have alternative viewpoints on the power apparatus of the world, who are literally destroyed by the supposedly liberal media, who are the people in Hollywood that have the real green light power, who are actually ultra-conservative closet fascists. So you have Orson Welles does the Citizen Kane movie, and it's loosely based on William Randolph Hearst. And so William Randolph Hearst goes after him and destroys his career. He winds up doing, and this is a guy who's already produced like 100 plays on Broadway and stuff, and off Broadway, and had the biggest radio show of all time with War of the Worlds. And his first movie out of the blocks is considered to be the greatest movie of all time by most people in the know, in the movie intelligentsia sector. And after what William Randolph Hearst did to him, and getting him blackballed from the industry, he only did 9 more movies in his entire life. And he was like 25 or something when he did Citizen Kane. 9 more movies. And these aren't like, Terrence Malick, where he's does a movie that's just grandiose event of a movie. It's just all-encompassing, hours-long masterpiece of introspection and nuance. It's not like that. Orson Welles worked bada bing, bada boom. I mean, this guy was, he was already working on another movie for the Magnificent Ambersons when Citizen Kane got released, and they sent him out on a foreign tour. They cut the hell out of Magnificent Ambersons and destroyed it while he was out of the country, and released it, and it was never the potential masterpiece that it could have been had they left Orson Welles up to his own devices as they had with Citizen Kane. And then it was nothing. No jobs anywhere. And apparently they use voodoo against the guy. So it's not just the fact that they did all these movies that were so indoctrinational, that were, just propaganda pieces, social engineering disguised as entertainment, in all these categories. It's the fact that they limited the amount, and then Charlie Chaplin, they got rid of him after he did that speech at the end of The Great Dictator, after he had the nerve to make fun of Adolf Hitler, and then they blacklisted him for the rest of his career and came up with this scandal of having a baby out of wedlock, and he went to court for it, and they did a blood test and proved he wasn't the father, and they ruined his career anyway. And then the minute he turned his back to go visit his home country, they took away his visa and kicked him out of never allowed him to come back to the United States. Now, he came back on a quick visa for a Lifetime Achievement Award for the Academy Awards back in the early 70s, some of that, but it wasn't the same. I mean, they destroyed his career, they destroyed his life, and they kicked him out of the country for just speaking his mind and doing something, open-minded. And boy, was he right. It was 1939, so, I mean, he was a little ahead of the curve, but boy, was he right about Adnoid Hinkel, a.k.a. Adolf Hitler. And then they threw him out of the country for it. That's the nature of our country. That's the nature of the movie business. That's the nature of everything that they say about the Hollywood being a liberal media being a lie. Over and over again. If I had the time, I'd be able to take everybody down and take a look at all these things and deconstruct it. And the fact of the matter is that you got to do some of this yourself at this point. There's not time left. I don't have enough energy left. I can't even get through some of these speeches without getting on some crazy tangent for an hour and a half. Jesus freaking Christ, I'm only on number 8 and it's been 40 minutes already for this stupid freaking video. You think I'm going to be able to spend enough time to be able to instruct each and every one of you about what should be obvious about all the various different indoctrinational elements of our, the movie industry and what they're doing to our brains and our lifestyles and everything and our attitudes? I don't know about, how about Mattel? A company is in production for 45 new movies currently in 2026, all about their various different toys and product lines. So it's nothing more than a big, giant 90-minute long infomercial for their toys, directed to kids primarily. Again, child abuse, a different form. But you won't want to admit that there's child abuse other than sexual child abuse because it lets you off the hook. That way you can go down into the basement and spend some really quality time with Pornhub while your kids are just watching this endless bombardment of materialism and brainlessness, completely wipe out their brainstem. And they're sitting there watching, like, I want Transformers. Freaking Formers. God damn it, what the hell's wrong with you? There's just people who have, these characters that come in from outer space, and the two things that they can exist as is either a giant menacing robot or a 1980s era muscle car from outer space in the middle of nowhere. They're like sitting around and thinking like, well, how should we design these robots? Well, we got to have them as robots. We'll call them Transformers so they can transform into things. What should we have in transformatives? I know. How about a Camaro? How do they know what a Camaro is? Some other universe. Metaloid or whatever their home planet is. Megatroid. Heavens to Giratroid. Number 7. The top 10 worst atrocities committed by corporations. That thing that Aaron Brockovich got all worked up about. Okay? Pools of water with industrial runoff, and now they're getting rid of the EPA and getting rid of all that stuff, so it's going to be time for all that stuff to get, like all kinds of traction and whatnot. And you got, like Teflon. Okay, what an incredible thing. I can make eggs without spraying it with castor oil or whatever the hell they use, so they don't stick to my pan. You know what sticks to the eggs? Carcinogens. And stuff, and they go, they could possibly be tied in with all the autism and everything like that, all the chemicals that we're putting in all the wastewater that's running off from industrial hog farms into the water table, or all the radioactive stuff that's coming out of Fukushima Daiichi that they never were able to stop. The radioactive leak is coming out as much as it was over the last 15 years, and they don't have any place to put the radioactive water, so they dumped it in the Pacific Ocean. And then hours later, they have the first of what was 3 recalls in the second half of 2025 of shrimp from that area of the Pacific in Indonesia that was recalled because they were radioactive 3 times within days of having released all that radioactive wastewater from Fukushima Daiichi that they had no more place to put because there's so much of it into the Pacific freaking Ocean. Aaron Brockovich, yeah, my cleavage and blah, blah, blah. Whose cleavage is going to save us now that they're getting rid of the EPA and selling off all the national protected lands, and fracking and drilling and so on and so forth and blah, blah, blah? It was just, yes, bring me all the resources of the despicable human race. We must hurt the human race. Hurt them as much as we can. Yes. And we'll get Werner von Braun in to do fracking. We'll resurrect his dead Nazi corpse and have him go to town and ruining the lives, the health and well-being of the human race, especially all the Americans. And then we'll tell them that that red dye number 2 is the one that we need to focus on with all these other deleterious chemicals that we're infusing into their lives. We need to go after red dye number 2. You're just like, I don't know what the hell, you're thinking. Really, why, those of us left who really, kind of believe in a better tomorrow and a more fair and equitable world for all of us to live in and be respected within and do whatever we can to find what's, true, really true within ourselves and live and abide by that truth throughout our entire lives. Excuse me. And we're worried about red dye frickin' number 2. Jesus Christ. And the Make America Healthy Again campaign that they came up with early 2026, where they got Mike Tyson to be a sponsor. Like right in the middle of this vast Epstein files dealio and everything like that. And they're finding out that all these, mucky mucks were actually rapists and whatnot. And they're implicated at the very least and guilty, most likely. And they've got all this stuff is going on. And right in the middle of it, they decide to have this Make America Healthy Again, Eat Real Food campaign. And their poster child is Mike Tyson, a guy who's actually been convicted of rape. It can't possibly be happening. It can't possibly be this bad. And it can't possibly be stupidity. It's beyond the ability of anybody to come up with organically with stupidity as stupid as the reason. Stupid can't be the reason. It's got to be worse than stupid. Something worse than stupid? You're thinking, well, guy, who the hell are you to say that there's something worse than stupid? It is. It's worse than stupid. It's intentional. It's doing something to just, freak us all out. It could be because untethered. Irretrievably untethered. And then they'll come in with the AI robots, baby, and just sweep us off into some death camp and give us the advanced COVID. I think COVID was a beta test. I believe it exists. I don't know, how the hell do you even think about like some big virus that's killing people all over the world? Do you think all over the world is in on it? Maybe some of the doctors here in the United States were making bad decisions. Maybe they're, overestimating the amount of blame that goes on certain areas and things like that. But the fact of the matter is that most of the people who are complaining about it were in the South, and the density of people living in the South is much less than the density in the North, where all the people are going like, wow, people are dropping dead left and right. And people in the South that just weren't being affected by it because people are more spread out in the South. There's not as much density. And so it's two different problems in a country this vast with this many people. You can't, solve all the problems with the same sort of, through the same prism, because it's different. There's different conditions and things like that. It's like minimum wage. If you're going to give somebody in New York minimum wage of $10, something like that, they're going to have to be on public welfare, or they're going to have to die. But if you give somebody, in some rural area, give them a minimum wage of $10, he might be able to eke out a living. because the cost of living is so much different in various different areas of the country that you can't have one minimum wage that fits everybody in the whole place. It doesn't make any sense because, minimum wage in New York to actually have one job and survive it and work full time, it's probably something around $35. I mean, if you're being realistic, when people have a decent life and, do as their ancestors have done, is buy, like a decent dwelling and send their kids to school and all that kind of good stuff that they used to be able to do with low-end jobs. People who drove cabs used to be able to have a nice house and send their kids to school. I mean, why should that be any different now? Why should it be so much of degrading? I mean, it's obvious that the people on the top are soaking up all the resources for themselves and then stuffing it in their mattresses, not because they want more, not because they're greedy, because they know that if they hoard all of the resources for themselves, that means it's less for us, and they get a kick out of watching us squirm and suffer. That's the only thing that gives them a kick, is watching good people suffer. They love it. They probably, all those cameras that they've got, all over the place, that doesn't seem to have any effect on crime whatsoever. But what it probably does is they've got a really nice, billionaire only channel where they can watch all of us suffering and crying and desperate in our lives and get nice close-ups in full digital programming from all the cameras on the streets and, who knows what. All the backscatter machines that show everybody that goes through them naked. I'm sure that they pumped those into Dick Cheney's crawl space so that he could have a nice little show of all the little boys that they put through the backscatter machines. And it's going on. You know that it's true. The fact is that all these people are just complete and utter sociopaths that we've been subjected to and victimized by for decades now. It's just a real goddamn shame that nobody has any sort of clue as to how to be able to collectivize against it. All right, so anyway, top 10 worst atrocities committed by corporations. We're up to number 6. And I'm going with Clear Channel / Live Nation / Radio Disney. And I've already kind of talked about all these things. All these people doing these despicable acts of choosing manufactured idols, plastic nobodies who are out there with the lowest common denominator sort of appeal, and infusing all of their music and movies with surreptitious product placement and all that kind of stuff. It's and then they've got the Clear Channel's run by Robert Pittman, who is the same guy who ran MTV, who turned a generation or two into a bunch of surface-minded phonies, and turned the music industry from being sort of an enlightened and inspiring aspect of our lives within our culture into nothing more than a cheap fashion show. And then they got that same guy, you did such a good job at dumbing people down and dulling down their sensibilities and turning them into a bunch of plastic drones with VH1 and MTV, that we're going to give you this Clear Channel initiative. And, we've got this guy named Rush Limbaugh, and we want you to make him a star as he lies and destroys all sense of objective truth and morality. And we need you to popularize him. And Robert Pittman's like, hell yes. Robert Pittman, as it turns out, is the guy when it comes to, he's the titular figurehead all time, the number one first ballot member of the all-time most evil propagandists in the history of planet Earth, far surpassing Joseph Goebbels, leaving Joseph Goebbels in the dust. Joseph Goebbels is kissing the hem of his garment and wetting his lederhosen at the thought of the effectiveness of Robert Pittman. And then, of course, there's Radio Disney. What more am I going to say about that? Number 5, top 10 worst atrocities committed by corporations. Joe Camel and the marketing of candy-flavored vape tobaccos and such to children. I've talked about this before on various different other top 10 worst lists that I presented, at how there's statistical analysis that shows that people who get addicted to tobacco for life do so before their 15th birthday, and that's why they have to market to kids, because they know that if they don't get them by the age of 15, they could slip through the cracks and never become addicted to tobacco at all. Wow, what a tragedy. And so they go after kids. And again, child abuse. child abuse that we don't want to admit to, child abuse that exists in ways that are sort of nuanced that it's not easy for us to comprehend or fight against. It's just so much easier to blame rich people for, molesting them physically, but we all are complicit. We are all accessories to the crime of molesting them intellectually and emotionally and spiritually. I mean, it's not just a singular problem, even though the problem is so much more advanced than we think about it. It's not just rich people molesting them physically. It's once every 9 minutes in this country, a child is sexually molested. And what are you doing about it? Just complaining and posting about it or something like that? Number 4 of the top 10 worst atrocities committed by corporations, the TV series 30 Rock. Okay, now I know that a lot of people are going to be like, oh, now he's going after 30 Rock. Okay, this guy really, is there nothing that can pass by the scrutiny of your all-seeing, all-knowing eye? Well, there probably is, but it's certainly not going to be 30 Rock, because that show is one of the worst crimes against humanity disguised as a TV show that I've ever seen. And it's the principal complaints I've got are twofold. Number one, the character, Benny, what's the guy's name, who gets in the car accidents all the time and stuff, with Walmart semi-trucks hitting him, Barry Do Hatchet. What's that guy's name? Brian, Chris, I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy, the black guy from Saturday Night Live, who plays the, sort of flighty character, comedic character in 30 Rock. I'm sorry, I forgot his name, but one of the most racist depictions of anybody ever. I mean, the guy's shown to be a, kind of drugged out, whacked out nut job who knows nothing. Is an intellectual equivalent of a pea. And he runs around with his crew, and the crew just sort of sits around and does nothing, and just living off of his largesse. And it's just such a pathetic, it's almost Amos and Andy level degrading to people of color to watch this guy in action. For me, I don't want to speak for anybody of a person of color as they see the character through their eyes, but I watch it and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, why do we have to live in such a horrible world, and such a just an exploitative and mean-spirited place in our country and our society and everything like that? And it's just so horrible to see that character is, that people can live with that character in a modern day culture and not just be completely outraged that this is going on. It's insane. It's absolutely just literally insane. And I hate the fact that our society is subjected to this stuff, and and they normalize it. And think about it like this: at the time, the NBC was owned by General Electric, which was the world's largest defense contractor. Okay, and they swept up a lot of media so that they could control the spin and, all the various different types of things that you would think a defense contractor who's in the business of melting babies, primarily babies with a dark-hued skin tone, would do if they owned a television network. And it's things like this character on Chris... I gotta look it up, man. It's bugging the hell out of me. Man, I just feel so completely demoralized thinking about it and stuff like that. Hang on a second. 30. Excuse me, I apologize. Whoopsies. 30 Rock TV series. Man, it's just, I know it. I'm just like, it's one of these things that's stuck in my brain here. Tracy Morgan. The Tracy Morgan character in 30 Rock is one of the most racist depictions of a character, and by my way of looking at it, since Amos and Andy. And I don't know if you've ever seen Amos and Andy. it was started off as a radio show voiced by white people in speaking with dumbed down black voices, dialects, and I was just you're talking about sort of like the Rochesters of the world and minstrel shows of the world. I mean, just the most despicable inherent racism and bigotry that you can imagine, depicting characters as dumb, as slow, and worthless in many respects in terms of their intellect and their pride and their own ability to be able to do something that has integrity, intellectually or spiritually. And by my way of seeing it, that's what the Tracy Morgan character in 30 Rock is set out to be. And I saw, if you look in the 50s when Amos and Andy made its way into television, they did replace the white guys with black guys. But the characters in Amos and Andy are shown to be liars and cheats, like the Kingfish, and kind of slow on the uptake. And then you have occasionally you'll throw in a white person in a position of authority and stuff like that. And it is a minstrel show. And I saw, from the time I watched a little bit of Ozzie and Harriet, and this is just to find out what it was and to experience it for what it was. And they've got, little problems like, Ricky's got 2 dates to the prom, and, all this like sort of lightweight melodrama and whatnot. And then Ricky will sing a song and he's like, oh, everybody's happy, everybody's great, everything's life is great. And so, but in an episode of Amos and Andy, I saw one where they've got where Amos buys a gift for his wife for I think their anniversary, and it turns out somehow that it's a purse, and somehow there's a gun inside the person. Not Amos, a Kingfish buys the purse for his wife, and there's a gun inside it, and he gets the gun, and he's like, what do I do with this gun? And he's like, I'm going to go sell it at a pawn shop. Goes to the pawn shop thinks that he's holding it up with the gun, even though he's just trying to sell it, and he gets arrested and busted, and then he goes to court, and his lawyer is a complete moron, and it was a black guy. And then they have the judge, the white guy, who's kind of adjudicating the thing. He's like all wise and everything like that. He's the only person who's really articulate and has, sort of like any kind of focus to his character and, sort of groundedness to the character. And he's the one who sort of, lets Kingfish off the hook ultimately when they find out that the gun had gotten into the purse inadvertently at the department store. And then they let him off the hook. But the judge points out, saying, like, when you went to try to sell this thing, that was illegal, too. So you actually broke the law, but I'm going to let you off with a warning. And so, the kindly white judge steps in and cuts Kingfish some slack, and he goes to jail and everything like that. And it's just like, this is the same era that on the, like in the Ozzie and Harriet show, where they're just having these like sort of innocuous little problems, like who should I take to the prom? And in the Amos and Andy show, they're going to jail. They've got moronic lawyers, and they got the magic white judge is letting them off the hook, even though he actually did commit a crime. It's just astonishing, and that's what's going on to me, by my eyes, on 30 Rock. And it just seems to have that same sort of approach to the character. I might be wrong. I really wish I had some other activists that I could talk to about this and wasn't a unilateral type of monologue. I want to know more about how people feel about it. Because for me, I just see it and it just grinds my gears to no end. But that's not even the really the only thing that's going on here in this despicable hate crime of a show. And that's the character of Alec Baldwin, who's the head of this network at 30 Rock, who's calling all the shots, and he is an executive from General Electric, and so he's a war criminal, and he's shown as like a sort of curmudgeonly but well-intended leader of all these people. And, kind of, he's a snob, a multimillionaire, some whatever, but he's also, has some very human interactions, almost like he is an actual human being, which we know that General Electric executives could not possibly actually be. And seeing the wanton levels of inhumane destruction that they've created in our lifetimes in the world, and yet they depict him as like sort of like a kind of nice guy that you'd like to get to know, that you would want to mentor you. And I'm like thinking like, well, there is. I mean, that's a hate crime again, right there. Why would you possibly want to depict somebody that evil coming from that evil thing? Why would any network want to depict that unless they were in on the game, unless they were trying to manipulate, control attitude and opinions about things based on their ability to be able to have control of the media? And this is not, again, another element that disproves the whole falsehood, the big lie of liberal media. Because in a real liberal media, they would never do anything like that. Certainly to the Tracy Morgan character, and most definitely not to the Alec Baldwin character. They wouldn't depict him as heroic and a kindly a mentor of all these other people. And totally deny and totally dismiss all the various different things about General Electric that, that portray them as they really are. As people who are looking to create new, better, more effective ways to melt children. Number 3. Top 10 worst atrocities committed by corporations. Fishnet condoms. That's actually one of mine. For a little bit of humorous diversion. All right, number 2. How they make it so that the only possible happy ending that they allow for movies is represented by monogamous heterosexual coupling. I got notes for this one, sorry. Talk about your social engineering. I wonder if the lawyers put them up to it, knowing that with movies inciting people to get married, knowing that like 50% of marriages end in divorces, that all the lawyers would get 33% of everything that 50% of the people in this country own as their fees for all these damn divorces. Is the movie industry in on a quid pro quo for lawyers? Because lawyers really are the only people who can speak the language of how laws affect all of our lives, and nobody knows that language other than lawyers who are trained in it. You can't go to represent yourself. The reason why you can't represent yourself is because you don't know the language. Lawyers know the language. Well, they had to pay them off somewhere. They can't just let them float around with just whatever fees that they're able to get, willy-nilly. They need to create a baseline from which all of them could get super wealthy as a payoff, quid pro quo, for managing the oppression of the masses, which the lawyers are the gatekeepers, the ultimate gatekeepers for the wealthy. Because in a world where everything transpires as part of the legal system, the people who are running the legal system for the rich people are the ultimate lapdogs. All right, so now go to the final, thank God, the final of the top 10 worst atrocities committed by corporations in the history of everything. And number 1 is everything that every corporation has done ever. God bless them. Everything ever. I do a lot of these things. I actually should stop copping out with these sort of everything ever number 1. I got a lot of number 1 slots are occupied by everything ever, like, worst atrocities by Big Pharma, everything ever. Worst atrocities by intolerant bullies, everything ever. It's always everything ever in all of my lists, because we're talking about the worst ofs. So at some point where you got to say, like, what's the worst album by Eric Clapton? You got to go everything ever he ever did. And you get, you're wrong 4 times in his entire life. Blues Breakers, the 3 Cream albums. I'm not counting, I count Goodbye Cream and Hello Cream as half albums. like half of it's okay and half of it's just like, are you kidding me? So those two albums only really equate to one album. And then you got Wheels of Fire, which is only really kind of a half album too, even though it's a double album, because like so much of the stuff is like live stuff that's kind of available elsewhere. And Disraeli Gears is really the only real full album that they did. Although I will add in Live Cream, the first full live album, which is like a different album because it's like a totally different band when they were live. And I'm not going to say that, Eric Clapton was the worst out of Cream by far, while I'm on a Eric Clapton tangent. Cream was Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker. Eric Clapton was just some guy that they got to play repetitive blues licks at high volume and occasionally do some backup vocals. But anyway, he was on those albums and they were, occasionally good. Really good. In fact, in Disraeli Gears and Deserted Cities of the Heart and White Room on Wheels of Fire. Everything else maybe not so much. Occasionally, once in a while. Decent song here and there. But he backstabbed that band and got out of it, before they could really come to full fruition after 2 years and stuff. I'm like, Eric Clapton's like, oh, I'm out of here. Same thing he did to the Blues Breakers. Snooty little backstabbing, nobody, little twerp. Say, oh, well, bye Blues Breakers. I got bigger fish to fry. Same thing he did to frickin' Yardbirds before that. Or, does one song with him. He doesn't even do the whole song. He's just there for the middle 8. He shows up and does a solo in the middle of it, like a short, tiny little solo. Barely even a solo. And then he's out of the band by the end of the song. He's already gone. Where did Eric go? I don't know. Well, let's release the single anyway. Get the hell. And then he goes to Blind Faith after Cream, and he backstabs all those guys, especially Steve Winwood, who really didn't deserve it. He committed to being with that band and trying to grow it and develop it, and he just left, and he backstabbed the hell out of him. And then he goes to Derek and the Dominoes, and then he backstabs his best friend George Harrison, trying to steal his wife by making a whole album about her. And then she finally leaves him, and then he's got, can I say whiskey dick? From heroin, and he never even, really, takes her to town, and he backstabs her and dumps her. And this is one of the worst people in the history of everything. And I also have really long thoughts about him being a murderer, where I think Eric Clapton is the guy who might be responsible for the deaths of Dwayne Allman, okay? Because they do Derek and the Dominoes together, and I'm sure that everybody's comments about Derek and the Dominoes was like, man, Eric, your guitar playing is badass, especially when you're playing the slide. And he's probably for the umpteenth time, got to tell him, oh, yeah, well, the slide, that was the Butch Trucks. What's the guy's name? Dwayne Allman. That was Dwayne Allman. I'd be, oh. But he sounds really good on the album. And he heard that probably 1,000 freaking times to the point where, and this is a guy who's backstabbed everybody in his entire life. His entire life. Disingenuous. The minute you turn your back, he's off looking for greener pastures and screwing you over. And this is the guy who has to endure hearing a bunch of people say, oh, I loved your slide guitar playing on Derek and the Dominoes, and having to respond to them, that was Dwayne. And to the point where he's like, I'm going to kill Dwayne. And he killed Dwayne, as far as I'm concerned. And then he goes on, and he has later, 10 something years later, or whatever, 15, 20 maybe, whatever it is, he shows up to Alpine Valley in Wisconsin to do a gig, and guess who else is on the bill with him? Stevie Ray Vaughan. I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan just before that on his double headlining tour with Jeff Beck. And Stevie Ray Vaughan was transcendent. It was one of the best performances I've ever seen. I've seen some really, really good ones. And he was, and not only just his music and his playing, which was spectacular, but also his patter in between the songs, where he was, actually like a visionary. Like this guy had he had just given up the drugs and he was clean and everything like that. And this guy is coming off a combination of Buddha meets James Baldwin meets Sun Tzu. I don't know. It's just a truly enlightened man at the peak of his game in every aspect of it, intellectually, spiritually, and guitar chops wise. And then he goes to play Alpine Valley, and Eric Clapton kind of like who had played a few strong licks back in 1965 with the Blues Breakers, on a Live Cream album, and everything else is just sort of, whatever. And then he spends 40 years, whatever it is, doing absolutely nothing, letting what skills he did have atrophy to the point where he's just a total nothing, nebbish guitar player, doesn't have any chops at all. And he gets on stage with Stevie Ray Vaughan at the peak of his powers, and Stevie Ray Vaughan probably blew him sky high out of the water and just like wailing all over. And Eric Clapton's just going like the same old do 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 boo 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 dee dee boo boo boo, and Stevie Ray Vaughan's going just I can picture it in my mind. And Eric at the end of the show, he's like sitting around with his Illuminatus / Freemason lackeys, and he's like, I need you to do something to the engine of Stevie Ray Vaughan's helicopter that will make its ability to take flight negated. And Stevie Ray Vaughan's dead. Again, immediate association with Eric Clapton leads to death of the greatest guitar players in history. And where was Eric Clapton the night that Hendrix died? There's lots of rumors that say that Hendrix, had he not been turned on his back, wouldn't have choked on the vomit and would have lived. Now they blame it on the paramedics, but if you want to, you can come up, if you play Boggle with the word paramedics, you can make the word Eric out of the word paramedics in Boggle. Kind of. Almost. So what I'm saying is Eric Clapton, I believe, in my mind, in my heart, is a murderer who killed Hendrix, Duane Allman, and Stevie Ray Vaughan. And threw his baby out the window of a hotel so he could score a hit for his flagging career. And look, I'm not saying that I have evidence for this. I'm not going to be remunerating a series of annotated footnotes that show the various resources that points to what evidentiary proof I might have for all this stuff. This is just instinctual. It's my gut. And I have a big gut. And it's frequently right. And I honestly believe that Eric Clapton is a mass murderer. And it was probably covered up by the government. They're just like, oh, let him go do it. What do we care? And they probably have all the proof that they need. They probably had it on Hendrix. They're like, we saw Eric Clapton was leaving the house, and 2 minutes later, Hendrix was dead. The medical examiner, and they're just like, well, just let him go do it. They're busy, purging everybody for leftward-leaning progressives that had a mainstream level of distribution and recognition anyway. So he was just, doing the work for him. They probably would have gotten around to killing Duane Allman and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Hendrix on their own if Clapton had done it for him. Am I done here? Did I get through number one? Did I do ding ding? Oh, Jesus Christ. What the hell? It's funny. I get these blackouts all the time. It's not what you think. I have a vast array of production service. I have more people working on the production side of this than Donald Trump did while they were grooming him to look presidential with the 150, 200 people who were training him to be, like a good public speaker and filling him with all this insulting material and nicknames and all this stuff that were all, intentionally hired not to make a good TV show, but actually to groom him to seem presidential because they were grooming him to the whole time to becoming the titular figurehead of the unveiling of the crypto-fascist shadow government. There it is. Yeah. So I think that's it. Anyway, what a pleasure. What an extreme honor to be here on today's top 10 worst stuff list. I didn't think it was going to be like a big one. The previous one I did earlier this evening was a real snorer. Just absolutely the perhaps worst top 10 worst of lists in North America for that was one for the books. So I feel this one went a little bit better. Perhaps I wasn't angry enough would be my one sort of note that I would give to myself, note to self, make it angrier next time out of the box. But anyway, before we go, I've got some disclaimers. First off, of course, everything that I said here, it's just opinions, not of my own, but bestowed upon me by the universe. Channeling, not to say highfalutin or anything like that. Just, anybody can do it. All you got to do is, sort of open yourself up and become a voracious reader and kick all of your personal aspirations to the curb. Don't have anybody in your life that gets too close. Keep them at arm's length and try to separate yourself so you have a lot of time for reflection and learning and delving into a wide array of subject matter. And don't let what people are telling you in the mainstream media be the be-all, end-all of the subjects that they're discussing. They're telling you perspective. They're not telling you the truth. They're telling you editorial spin. They're not telling you the absolute objective reality of what's going on in the world. And they're omitting a whole heck of a lot of stuff so you never even get the big picture. They're omitting everything about child labor and Pakistani coal mines. They're omitting everything about all the sweatshops all around the world. They're omitting everything about how much we could feed the world 3 times over if we weren't giving corn to cows to make beef in the United States. They're omitting the fact that there's 9 million people who die every year from starvation-related causes, and 30% of the food that we manufacture for eating goes straight into the garbage can in this country. They're omitting the fact that the amount of money that we spend on pet food for recreational pets is the same amount of money that it would take to be able to stop starvation throughout the world. And they're omitting all kinds of stuff. And so it's not lies necessarily by what they're presenting to us, because they have, vast armada of lawyers to be able to protect themselves from slanders and et cetera, et cetera. So clearly they are sensitive enough to that to be to keep the lawyers on staff. And so what they do, the way they lie to us is by not presenting the entire truth, not from what they actually say. Because if they lied throughout an entire broadcast, everything like that, they'd have 20 lawsuits for every half an hour's worth of news. So they can't do that. But the way that they lie to us is different. It's lies by omission. Or they won't. The United States has, since the days of Ronald Reagan, has embedded the media into the military, and we don't know what the extent of that is, or how much it sort of spreads out to media in other avenues of our lives. Is it just media in war zones, or is it all media when it has to do with everything that has is pertaining to the military, or is it all media everywhere at all times that's embedded into the military so that they keep a watchful eye and censor anything that doesn't go against the party line? We don't know, but we do know that it was embedded in the military back in the Reagan days so that we're not getting the full picture, and they didn't want to have another Vietnam, where Vietnam was actually showing things that were going on in Vietnam, where people were self-immolating and all kinds of stuff, and the effects of Agent Orange and My Lai Massacre and all that kind of stuff was actually going on in the regular news back in those days. Well, they don't show any of that stuff now. They don't want you to hear about it. They show you cutesy little movie versions of it, the movie Three Kings and stuff, where it's a bunch of like really hot-looking guys who are tooling around in Iraq, I think it was, and looking for buried treasure. Wow, what an adventure! While a million civilians are dying because of the lies that the neocons told us to say that a war was immediate and necessary for the United States to engage in Iraq, when none of the stuff that they told us was the reasons behind the war actually existed, like the rolling chemical laboratories and the anthrax and the yellow cake uranium and Niger and all that kind of stuff. It was all a bunch of lies. What the hell am I doing? I was supposed to be over with this. Anyway, so hit me up with the comment to be inspired to feel creative. If you feel like I've stepped on your toes or said things that you feel are offensive, I'm just trying to, I really do. I don't hate this country. I love this country. I love everything that I've loved in my life has come from this country. I want to help be part of the solution, not part of the problems. If you see something that you love in trouble, you don't just turn your back and say, "Oh, screw you." You go in and you do your best to try to save it, to pull it out of the tight spot. And and that's all I'm trying to do here. I'm not, some of the people that I've sort of done music with or collaborated with, some of them are just some of the most amazing people, and working and striving to being expressive and free and liberated within their hearts in the face of an immense amount of oppression and disingenuous behavior and exploitation and victimization and stuff. It's uncanny. I feel horrible to see it being snuffed out the way it is. And I feel like, the end times are upon us, but the AI stuff is vastly underrated about the impact that's going to have on the human race. So anyway, it's also to get at this place in my life where I can pontificate basically for an hour and a half with a short list of critiques and subject matters in front of me, and that's it. It is caused me so much detachment and isolation and grief, and I've been backstabbed so many times and attacked, physically attacked, and all various different types of things are just so horrible and left me with so much grief and pain and anguish and regret that, those of you who think that I'm a jerk off for whatever reason because of what I'm trying to say here, I express myself honestly and try to do my very best to make sure that our lives don't go to waste and we become exploited to the point where the human race can't even survive anymore. If you think that's so bad and everything like that, I can put, maybe give you a little comfort by letting you know that I can, my eyes are in so much pain right now, I can't even keep them open. And I can barely walk. And I have, I nearly lost everything trying to, put a plan into motion that would create an institution for the distribution of creative and alternative viewpoints in this world. And I got destroyed by the very people I was trying to help. If you think that that's great and lead to a great life, and you think that, because I can smile my way through this and joke around and stuff, that I must be, part of the smug army of jerk-offs, I don't know what to tell you. But I've suffered and paid for every assertion and realization, intuition that I've acted upon has just led to, it's like a horror movie, my life. So, maybe that'll make you feel better, and maybe realize that, if I can get through this stuff, you can get through this stuff, and you can if you take out just a little bit of that 5-hour block of time that you dedicate towards television every frickin' day, maybe you can be part of the solution, and we can work towards finding, getting through this mess together. Anyway, it's a real pleasure. Smash the like button. Smash it. Otherwise, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks for taking the time. We'll catch you next time.